Yeah, a warm welcome to everybody who is in the room. I'd like to talk about a very interesting topic, a topic about automation in terms of operations, and network should be designed for automation. Because normally we are talking about operations by the end of the deployment process, and then we have to figure out how we can maintain, how we can operate the networks. It happens as we introduce 3G, 4G, and I hope we can avoid that if we're introducing 5G. And that is my intention, to give you some insights, what is ongoing in the industry, what we are driving, not only on behalf of Deutsche Telekom, also on behalf of group of industry group, which have focused on that topic. Okay, well, where are we coming from? What are the challenges of the future? Well, you'll see that we're talking about 5G, for example, then it's obviously that we have to operate a lot of cells, small cells. We have to talk about IoTs as well. And finally, that means the capacity of the network has to be increased. The number of the devices will be increased. The number of customers will be increased, more than we saw in the past as we introduced 2G and 4G. It will be really a nightmare from the operations point of view to manage this kind of networks. Okay, having said that, another challenge is there as we introduced virtualization. You know that we started the ISG in ETSI in 2012. I'm involved in that since 2013. That means we did a lot around that. We gave some clarities. We defined the reference architecture in ETSI. It is well known and well used. Of course, each operator has their own view how they implement it, but it is there. In these days, as we started the activity, the OSS part was not in the scope of this architecture. Then the next thing is we're looking forward about GMN Slicing idea in terms of 5G. That means, yeah, well, we have another challenge coming up to us in order to maintain the networks and to operate it. And yes, but if we would proceed as we normally are doing it, then we have this kind of thing. In the past, we introduced 5G, 4G, and the rest of the technology. We had this simple structure. We had the network element, we had a proprietary EMS, and on top we had all these nice OSS, BSS application. I think you know all of these nice things. But finally, we built a house. A house looks like, on the right side, a very complex house. It's not very simple. It's very complex to maintain. It maybe looks nice, but from the operations point, it's really difficult to maintain that. Okay, that means, well, in principle, we increase the complexity, and if you're moving forward, as I described before, this kind of complexity will be much more complex than that is known, and it will be difficult to maintain and to operate these future networks if you continue as we did. Also, these nice things which we are talking about, artificial intelligence, about big data, and all this kind of thing, these are tools which we have to compose in order to help us to maintain the network. Okay, what we are looking for is no human involvement in the operations part of our networks. It is really key for us, for the operators, to achieve this target. And maybe you attended the keynote in the beginning of the year, and my boss Arash presented this slide as well. For us as Deutsche Telekom, and I assume for a couple of other operators, it's really a key target to reduce the involved human in the maintenance stuff of our networks. And as I said, we have to discuss it right from the beginning. We have to design our networks ready for automation. Okay, what happens in what we're looking for is maybe in SDN and NFV, we need real-time capabilities because if you know that, I think you know that in the past we did no real-time management, we did post-processing. And now in terms of 5G, low latency stuff, and all this automotive thing, which I'm discussing right now, we need much more real-time capabilities than we have today. And my previous speaker talked also about closed-loop automation. I think that is a topic as well that we have to consider if you're talking about in the management of future networks. And I already said we have to integrate design framework and model-driven execution. That is something what we're discussing internally as well and across a couple of companies and operators also. Big data is a topic, as a tool, which we have to consider. All these kind of things, you have to bring it together in one picture. These are puzzles, pieces of a puzzle of a wider picture about the management of future networks. But it's key that we are starting with simplification. Not make it much more complex than it is today. We have to start about simplification. And one topic of that is really to start from the design point of the networks, that we have really talked about this one more in detail, how we design the network in order to achieve automation for the networks. Okay, and I think we can't do that alone. It should be done on an industry collaboration, and that is what already started in December of 2016. A couple of operators were involved in universities, vendors from the open source communities. We did a workshop in Bonn in December 2016 where we discussed this topic from different point of view. And finally, we decided that we run a small project amongst these involved parties, and started in March of 2017, and it's come to an end by 2017, September 2017. The results are there, but it's only the first step. Now we're a little bit more. What are the obstacles to achieve automation as a target? The outcome of that was that we agreed a project in order to achieve the target of automation. In these days, it was in the first project, it was a loosely coupled activity, and we said now we need a frame for that in order to achieve this target. And what we discussed and is now under preparation that we are like to go to ETSI and suggested a project, a new ISG, with a similar structure about the SDN NFV. It means 2 years target, but I like to emphasize here that there's a little bit different approach in terms of standardization. You know that ETSI is very focused on the classical way of SDOs, like other SDOs as well, that's 3PP, MEF, and others. It takes time. It takes really time to come to a standard. I think that is not longer the best way to achieve a standard for our industry. It should be done much faster than we have. And what we are seeing is we need a collaboration between industry in terms of requirements, because no partners coming on that game. That means the verticals, the automotive, the health industry, and that is something we have to consider if we are talking about management of our networks. We have to get these requirements from them. Then, of course, there's an interaction with the classical SDO is definitely needed, because they did a great job. We have to learn from that what they achieved and what they already did. And the new kids on the block are the open source communities. I think what they are shaking a little bit the way how we can come into standards. You can talk about OSM or ONAP, all these good projects. They are bringing new ideas in this process. And this triangle is more or less a good example how we can compose our activities around that. And for the time being, we are in the preparation process. We have 14 partners of ETSI, which are suggesting a project, a new ISG, as I said. And it will be go for board approval in November of this year. And if we will get the approval, then we will have the kickoff meeting in the first days of January of 2018. That means nothing is approved right now. That means we have a good idea how we proceed. That means we have a lot of partners which have a very huge interest to achieve that. And that is the current status right now. Well, this is all the partners which are right involved in the activity. You will see we have a good footprint here. We have big partners. We have the classical telco companies. We have operators in this project. And of course, a little bit of advertising from my side. If you have an interest to join us, please do so. And it would be good to come to a common approach how we achieve automation in the future. Yeah. Okay, as I said, more or less my final slide. In order to achieve time, maybe we have time for questions now. That would be nice. As I said, it should be really a common activity. It's not an idea only for Deutsche Telekom or for Orange or for another operator. It is really an activity which we have to drive jointly with the classical SDOs, with the industry, with open source communities, because what we have today is too many fragmentation. We have open source, we have CGP, we have ETSI and others, but everybody is looking from their own perspective and not a holistic approach, and that is definitely missing right now. And this, from an operator point, is really a problem which we have to tackle with. We are spending, as Deutsche Telekom, a lot of money in the area of OSS, and in terms of budgets, is that not very longer useful, and in terms of management in the future, definitely not. And that is our key point, is really not only as Deutsche Telekom, for a couple of operators and for the industry to come to this holistic approach, how we manage our networks in the future. Okay, if you are interested in, because we are on a journey, as you see, it's really not an easy journey. The results of our workshop which we did in December of 2016, you can find the results on this page. You see, you'll find a lot of interesting presentations, more than 30. We presented in 2 days. It was a fruitful discussion. We had a good spirit in the room. But now we finally have to make it. We have to do it. We have to come to a common understanding what should be done next in order to achieve automation. And for us, I like really to emphasize this automation thing is key to success. And it's not only success from a operator point of view, because it's a success for the industry completely. And I think that is something what we have to do in the next couple of months to find out what are the obstacles in detail, and then we have to find a solution for that. And the idea is that we are defining requirements, short implementation, learn from the implementation, and give feedback to the requirements team, what is good and what is worst. And not defining requirements, standardize it, implement it. As I said, this approach is not longer used, so it takes too long time, and not really successful by the end of the day. Yeah, that's, I like to discuss with you more in detail. That is the reason why I'm stopping here. It would be good to get some questions from your side as well, because it's an interactive presentation, more or less. I hope you have some questions. Can I start with a question? Who is coming from operations? Who worked in his life in operations? 1, 2, 3, 4. But mainly, have no experience with operations. My request, because I work for a while in operations, it would be good if everybody from us would spend some time in operations and understand which painful exercise do you have if you have maintained a network. And that would be my request, my personal request, but nothing to do with the presentation. Okay, what is any question about that? Yeah.
How mature you believe that NFV or SDN will operate in the old legacy operations? Currently, we do have some, let's say, MSANs, DSLAMs, some access aggregators, these kind of network elements. So up to which level the maturity of operating such old NEs or legacy NEs by using SDN or NFV?
I think SDN and NFV by their own, they are more or less stable, they're a little bit mature. But that is not the problem. The problem is that you have to converge all this kind of information. That is a problem from an operator point of view. And that is a little bit missing for the time being. I think if we have to draw a target picture, how the architecture look like in the terms of operations, and then we have to find out what are the reality, and then we have to talk about how we can mitigate from the current situation to the future version. I like to avoid, that is my personal view, that we start from what is existing, because then it's misleading. Then we are putting another box on my small house, which I said in the beginning. And that's a key difference. I think we need a complete new approach. And the one components of the OSS layer will move to the network element much closer than it is today. And that is a key difference in terms of operation if we compare our current solution with the future target figure. That means the legacy stuff have to consider in some way and in some point of the deployment process.
Because we are, to be honest with you, we are afraid that we fail because maybe whatever solution that comes, it may not be fully integratable with these old network elements. Because, you know, it's a long time.
Yeah.
And our finance guy, they will reject to replace all
I completely agree. If I'm talking to my management in Deutsche Telekom, we like to avoid to say it OSS. Because OSS is old, stupid, cost incentive, and not very sexy. Then we are saying, okay, let us talk about network and service management of future networks. It's much nicer, it's much better, and the CFO will listen more to you what you're explaining than other people. And that is maybe a way how we can manage this activity. Because if you're starting with OSS, you're falling in a trap. Yeah.
If I correctly understand, your aim is not to become yet another standardization body. On the contrary, as I understand, you want to coordinate the standardization efforts across the industry. But do you have plans how to do it? For example, are you going to support one of the open source initiatives, like ONUP, for example, and see it as a guiding force for identifying standards and then doing the standards? My skepticism is that even operators are boosting different open source initiatives. For example, Telefonica is boosting OSM, Orange and AT&T is supporting ONUP. So how are you going to synchronize all these efforts across the industry?
This is a very good question, and I hear this question all over the place. It will be not that easy in terms of coordination, but the good thing is, for example, Telefonica is part of OSM, is also part of our initiative here. And the common understanding is that there is a gap for the time being in the open source community. They are not covering all areas. And that is, if we find how we can support each other, that we are saying, okay, these are the gap that is missing for the time being in open source communities, I think then we have a benefit on both sides, the open source community, of course, and we as well. And it is in terms of discussion, in terms of partnership, in terms of relationship, I think that will be the difficult part of this initiative. Not only, let me say, standards, to find standards from that point of view is easy. But human behavior to manage and expectation to manage is much, much harder. But it is time to do that.
You've been emphasizing the operation side of the house, right? So that you have your own experience and you have encouraged us to also cycle through the operations at some point in our lifetime. Can you express as to how you expect the operations center, the surveillance center, the incident management center, how would you see that center change in the context of zero touch?
I think the centers will be available in the future as well. There's a need for that in order to get an overview what is ongoing on the network and what kind of quality we are delivering to the network, to the customer. From my point of view, I think you need the most intelligent people in that center, because the hope is that we are minimizing the faults, we are minimizing the traps, we are minimizing all these issues which are going normally in an operations center, because for the time being, the operator is a conversion part. The manager of the network, he's in front of the screen, he is managing the network in his brain. But that will not longer work in the future. As I said, the increase of numbers of devices and the complexity, he will be not able to do that. But by the end of the day, we need intelligent people to take care about the rest, but it's not automated, let me say. And that's my recommendation is really bring your intelligent people in that center to understand what is ongoing. Of course, you see new human involvement. My picture with this data room, nobody is there. There's a vision. To achieve that vision until a certain level, that is the question. There will be a rest of human involvement, but it should be really minimized. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.